Our first movie tells the story of a friendship behind prison walls that spans more than 20 years.
So welcome to episode 15 of Middlebrowmadness, an exercise in podcast hubris. My name is Derek Gane.
Hi, my name is Warren E. Buffett, an American business magnate, investor, and philanthropist.
See, I know
am
that's
the
false.
most successful investor in the world. I believe strongly in giving while living, and I have one idea that never changed in my mind, that you should use your wealth to help people, and I have decided to give $1,500,000, $1,500,000 United dollars to randomly selected individuals worldwide. On receipt of this email, you should count yourself as the lucky individual. Your email address was chosen online while searching at random. Kindly get back to me at your earliest convenience before I travel to Japan for my treatment, so I know your email address is valid. WarrenEBuffett0761@gmail.com. Email me. Thank you for accepting our offer. You are indeed grateful. You can Google my name for more information, Warren Buffett, or visit my website, www.wikipedia.org/Warren Buffett. God bless you. Best regard, Mr. Warren E. Buffett, billionaire investor.
Is this Warren Buffett spam?
This is, who can say if it's spam? Gmail seemed to think it was.
Sure.
I like to think that Warren Buffett is reaching out to me and has a great opportunity for me to get rich, Derek. So this is like my last episode of the podcast. I apologize. I wanted to see this whole thing out, but I got in that get rich quick scheme, and it's going to happen for me. So,
all right. Well, we wish you. Well, I don't know. Talking about we, this is a 2-person operation. I wish you, the very best in your future endeavors, and know that we'll leave the door open if things for some reason don't pan out. I can't see how it would.
I don't know why they would.
This is bulletproof.
The one thing that looks a little strange is that the actual email address this is from is not warrenbuffett0761@gmail.com. It's actually from warneybuffet -- @minos.ocn.ne.jp. So, who can say?
Of the Nebraska buffets. I know them well. Ah, man. Do people still fall like this? I guess this is the tangent part of the episode.
Someone has to fall for it, right? Because otherwise they wouldn't keep sending them out.
I guess. But I think it may just be like how many of these are sent out. It's got to be like tens of thousands.
Certainly. And maybe like 10 of them get responded to a year. But I mean, like, this is a completely free grift. I mean, not that it's a grift. This is like real life. But
sure.
Like, if it were a grift, this would be a very easy one to fake and a very easy one to get an old person with for a couple $100. Have you ever fallen victim to a scam, Derek?
Have I ever? I gotta know, but I do have a semi-related kind of funny story. When I was like 16 years old, I was walking in Ottawa, Ontario, our nation's capital. Well, my nation's capital. Yeah, and I was accosted by, I forget if it was PETA or Greenpeace or some organization. They were like canvassing and getting numbers and stuff like that for memberships and whatnot. And I got accosted by somebody, and in a moment of panic, because I didn't want to be rude, I gave my stepfather's name and phone number. Now,
nice, good one, good plan.
Here's the thing. Weeks later, I fielded the phone call from the group and said there must have been a mistake. And it was the most powerful move I had done in my entire young life at that point.
Was it accidental that you happened to field the phone call? Or?
Yeah, completely. I was home from school. It just so happens that I fielded the call. And I felt like a complete G, even if it was completely random and very unlikely.
Well, I'm very happy for you, Derek, that you were able to have that moment of power as a child, and it's led you to where you are today.
Yes, that was a sliding doors moment. 2 sliding doors moments in my life. Once, when I was 16, when I fielded my own phone call from a group I didn't want anything to do with, and once when I was 9, when I refused that my grandfather teach me how to play guitar. The 2 defining parts of my life.
And now that's why you're on a podcast. It's like really giving it to Andrei Tarkovsky, putting him in his place where he deserves to be.
I don't think he deserves to be 190th with this movie, but we'll get to that.
We'll get there.
First of all, who the hell are you, and what are you doing on the podcast?
I'm Isabel Arf. I read things that make Derek go off on tangents, and that's pretty much my whole purpose here. Sometimes I say things about movies, but
occasionally,
I don't want to be too full of myself in that situation. I know what I'm here for.
Middlebrow madness. Our show is very basic. Well, our show... Okay, wait a minute. I am basic. The show is not basic. Our show is very simple. Correct words are important. What we have here is a 256 movie single elimination bracket. Which movies, you may ask? The top 250 movies of all time according to the Internet Movie Database circa August of last year. So Captain Marvel is not on this list. Detective Pikachu is not on this list. I'm going to go see Detective Pikachu this weekend.
It's a great film. It's a great capital G, well, maybe not capital G, lowercase g, great film.
Is it a capital G good movie?
Oh, certainly, a capital G good movie. And there's some shit that happens in Detective Pikachu that I feel like I really want you to see it so we can talk about it. Because I also want you to see Serenity, too. So there's a lot of movies with spoilers this year that I've seen that Derek hasn't seen, and I am very mad that I can't talk to him about it.
I've not seen Glass. I've not seen Us. I haven't seen most movies this year because I'm way behind. I'm doing this fucking show.
The important one is Serenity. Everyone should watch Serenity, the Matthew McConaughey flick from this year. It's better than anything else in the IMDb Top 250. I don't think that's actually true. I don't think I'd stand by that.
That's like,
that
seems outsized even by your metrics.
But it is a 5-star film. Which is more than I can say than anything else we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think I would agree. What a weird thing to say on a podcast.
So what do we do here? What is this podcast about?
Single elimination bracket, baby. It's a tournament. We decide which, all the movies are paired up, and through the bulletproof method of the single elimination bracket, we figure out which movie is the best movie of all time, asterisk. And so far, we are 38 matchups. We're up to, well, not 38. I did my math wrong. 28. We're 28 matchups in. We're 28. Yeah, 28 matchups in, which means we have 56 movies that we've covered already. So we're getting to a quarter way through up the bracket. And these are the two matchups that we're going to be covering today. The Dark Knight Rises versus Andrei Rublev, and Wall-E versus The Truman Show. I had a nice time with all of these movies, actually. Okay, I had slightly less of a good time with one of these, but...
I had slightly less of a good time with two of these, but I mean, we'll get to that when it... although I had a surprisingly good time with one of them.
Yes, same here.
This is foreshadowing for our own episode that's going to be revealed in 2 seconds.
Alright, so let's just hop right into it. Our first matchup of the day, the 67 seed, the favorite. The 67th best movie of all time, Isabel. The Dark Knight Rises. Directed by Christopher Nolan, released in 2012, starring fucking everybody, but mostly Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, Anne Hathaway, Marion Cotillard, Tom Hardy, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and Morgan Freeman. It did pretty well at the box office, you could say. It is breathing rarefied air, and that is one of the few movies to have grossed $1 billion all time.
Jesus Christ.
Off a, Wikipedia tells me $250 to $300 million budget. Who knows? Who's to say how much money this cost? Versus Andrei Rublev, released in 1969, directed by Andrei Tarkovsky, starring Anatoly Solonitsyn, Ivan Lapiku, Nikolai Grinko, winner of the 1969 Fipresky Prize, and was not able to compete for the Palme d'Or at Cannes that year because of those wily Soviets. Well, the government specifically. Like, citizens probably had an opinion or not, but the government was like, yeah, I don't know about that.
No, I think we should have all of our opinions laid out about the Soviet Union on this episode. I think that's a good use of all of our time and not at all a waste.
Oh, man. Who wants to listen to us talk about the Soviet Union? Seriously.
Derek, how do you feel about the science of Marxism-Leninism?
Oh, God.
Where do you think it went wrong? Here's the great leftist question. Where did the Soviet Union go wrong? No matter what answer you give, it's probably incorrect.
I want to say authoritarianism is where it went wrong.
I don't want to be so bold, Derek. No. I feel like if we get into a serious discussion of how I actually feel about the Soviet Union, this will be way too,
I don't have the material for
Pretentious.
that, Isabel. I didn't prepare for that. I didn't know there was going to be a quiz.
I just read Lenin. I get to talk about everything I just read and how Lenin doesn't know fucking shit about anarchy. Like, sorry, all like the Leninites out there, like all the tankies that listen to this podcast, I guess.
We'll get to talking about people who are wrong about anarchism in very short order, because we're going to start talking about our first movie that we're covering might be the most ideologically muddled movie that we've covered on this show so far, The Dark Knight Rises. Third in a trilogy, directed by Christopher Nolan. Now, I don't even know where to fucking start with this.
Did you see this in theaters? I saw this in theaters, and it was...
I saw this in theaters. It was disappointing.
Yeah, I think like that's the key word with The Dark Knight Rises is everyone loves Dark Knight, obviously. Most people love Batman Begins.
Good movie.
But The Dark Knight Rises has a more checkered past, let's say.
Sure. Like, after Dark Knight, co-writer, director Christopher Nolan, someone we've anointed with the title of greatest living middlebrow filmmaker, was not that interested in making another one of these.
No, but they gave him a lot of money.
They gave him a shitload of money, and I really blame him for taking that check.
And they said, hey, you can make fucking Interstellar next if you want. Which, a great film.
Good movie. That I also saw in theaters and wept my fucking balls off. Interstellar's not on the top 250, is it?
No, it is not, sadly, because people don't have any taste.
I don't know about that. I mean, you gotta give the people a little credit. They did get Andrei Rublev onto this fucking bracket. So The Dark Knight Rises, this is the Bane one. And, so what's the plot of this fucking thing?
The bane of the series' existence? Something like that?
What, like...
Is that a joke? Does that count as a joke?
I think that counts as a joke. I'm just really, like, in earnest trying to think of, like, what the worst Batman thing is.
In general? Like
in general. Maybe movies. I don't know fuck all about the comics or really the TV shows, like animated or otherwise. But I think this has got to be up there, because this is kind of like a bloated, distended, just muddled, lumbering object. It's like it looks like a movie sometimes.
It's genuinely incoherent, which is
very incoherent.
Which is not something I didn't expect to say quite that much when we came into this. When I originally rated this, I think 3.5 or 4 stars. But on rewatch, I definitely bumped that down. And the thing I was constantly wondering is, what am I supposed to be getting from this film? And I don't think the film even knows what it's trying to get, because parts of it are clearly anti, like, wealth acquisition and anti rich people, essentially.
All the Catwoman stuff is anti rich people.
Yes.
All the
Bane stuff is anti poor people.
But like disguised as like
and anti redistributive justice.
It's like it's right. The Bane stuff is like right wing populism that uses the vocabulary of liberation and emancipation from your chains and from your lot. And the city is yours. Everything is back to you, while actually being authoritarian and this and that and the other thing. And then there's the whole Robin stuff, which is kind of more of a Batman Begins flavored, just straight up detective movie.
And more of a like, hey, cops, right? Cops rule.
Also, yes, cops rule. That's
kind of the thesis. If it's almost one thesis, it's that cops rule.
Yes.
And poor people drool.
You know what's awesome? A Law and Order. By any means necessary.
Good show.
God, I haven't seen an episode of Law and Order in ages. Yeah, there's a lot of strands here. It's like, it feels like, okay, we're doing one more of these, but we have to do all of this.
Which was everything I had in this movie.
Yes, so you've got all your favorites coming back. You've got Christian Bale, who I feel does some of his best work in the trilogy in this movie as an actor.
Yes, certainly. And Michael Caine doing some of his worst work in the trilogy.
There's a lot of people. This movie's got a deep bench, and it's got a lot of people just like slumming it. Like Marion Cotillard won a fucking Oscar, and she has probably the most laughable death scene I've seen in a major motion picture.
It's very bad, and also it ties in with like ideological incoherency. Whereas like the twist, if you haven't seen the movie, like just I guess you can watch
Spoilers.
it.
I guess.
Spoilers. She ends up being the actual bad guy behind Bane.
Yes.
But she's rich. Bane is theoretically not. They both grew up poor in a prison that's in the bottom of a well, I guess.
Yeah, somewhere in Africa.
In the Middle East, I would say. Like, it's supposed to be vaguely Middle Eastern.
Yeah, like, I guess, like, yeah, vaguely Middle Eastern, maybe like North Africa, somewhere over there is what we are to understand.
And I think that it's like, that whole concept points to one of the strange things about this film, which is that it wants to be real, and it wants to be like, this is a real Batman. This takes place in the real world, known as superpowers, X, Y, and Z. Except, that premise would almost work in a comic book. It would still be kind of racist in a comic book, but it would, like, it fits with the tone. Whereas in this movie, it seems like you took something from Aladdin and just threw it in here for no reason.
Ra's al Ghul, not the most enlightened comic character. Let's just put it that way. I mean, Tom Hardy, God love him. I mean, I really like Tom Hardy as an actor. He does his damnedest. He's ADR to hell, and not in the cool, like, spaghetti western way. It just sounds bad.
You can tell that, like, they had a different voice at first, and people were like, I can't understand what the fuck he's saying, so they redid the whole voice.
Yeah, Tom Hardy probably made a choice that the editor did not like.
So he made a different choice.
They're
strong choices. They're not necessarily good choices, but I like that someone in this film is making strong choices. In something like The Dark Knight or Batman Begins, there's a central plot that you can see from A to, like, B how it gets there. Whereas in this, if you start at A and you end up where it ends up, I don't really know how it got there. And I feel like the movie doesn't know how it gets there either.
There's a fucking neutron bomb in a truck for half an hour, for fuck's sake. I mean, this movie is goofy as shit. Like, if I were to just read the plot, it's goofy as all get out. This reads like a season of the Adam West Batman, because you've got, like, fucking Catwoman quipping it up, and the incoherence is not just the politics, it's everything.
I mean, like, you have a supervillain coming out of the sewer, stealing a neutron bomb, and cutting an island of a city off from the rest of the city. That's a silly premise in any way you cut it. But also, it also makes me think, like, wait, so if it's under the island, was he just in the sewers underneath this island? Or was he, like, also on the mainland? There's a lot of things that, like, I don't like harping on plot points.
Sure.
They're, like, not really that important to me. But sometimes in a film, they become so obvious and so glaring that you can't help but think, what was the actual explanation for this? Like, how does Batman get back to Gotham from the Middle East and no one knows he did it?
Like, but this wouldn't be so much of a big issue because here's the thing with Christopher Nolan, and this is his Achilles heel. He's not what I would call a memorable image maker. Like, he has memorable images, but he doles them out few and far between. This movie has one. And it's at the end where Batman takes his Batcopter or whatever and just flies out to the bay, flies over fucking Hudson Bay or wherever the fuck it's supposed to be, and lets that sucker detonate. And there's it's just sky, sea, and a mushroom cloud. Great image. But this is like the lasting image is just like how all the cops and how all of Batman stuff is like just super like teched out, all murdered out, and nothing in this movie really sticks.
I mean, let's be totally blunt. Like, the end of this movie is basically a bunch of militarized cops fighting what looks like a horde of, like, people. And they're the heroes.
Yeah.
And this movie, I mean, this was right in this was during, like, this was obviously a little bit after Occupy, but it's clearly influenced by Occupy Wall Street. I think, like, it's weirdly resonant now in a way that it shouldn't be. Where, like, now I don't really want to see a bunch of militarized police running in, like, formation at a bunch of people who look like they're unequipped to deal with it.
Yeah,
I don't know if I ever wanted to watch that, but now that it's, like, something that I see in the news, like, every single day, I want to see it even less.
Well, it's in these images are kind of in the pop culture vernacular, you know? Like, you can tell a lot by a society by its blockbusters. And this does not reflect on America well.
No, I mean, I don't think any of the Dark Knight movies do. I think that, like, as much as I think that I mean, we'll definitely talk about the original Dark Knight, which I think is still a genuinely great movie.
Yeah.
But just like Die Hard, where Die Hard is an inherently conservative film, so is The Dark Knight itself is an inherently conservative film. And I think this film pushes that even farther than like the fucking Patriot Act that happens in the original The Dark Knight.
Yeah, because what happens in this, we're probably way over time for this, but like the whole revolution that happens is like a right-wing nightmare. It's like literally poor people are going to take our stuff.
Yes.
They're going to kick us out of our homes and just take our jewels and cars and shit. And then what? Anarchy. And this movie gets a lot of things wrong, but it gets that especially wrong.
Certainly. And I think like there's moments of it trying to deflate that slightly or not make it seem as right-wing as it is through Catwoman. I think is like the voice of like the people, quote unquote.
Sure.
She's like you have all this money and like you don't give it to anybody. Like I'm at least giving it to like people who need it or like protecting people who need it. And that's made toothless by the actual way the movie functions, where basically it says if Manhattan or something. Is it Manhattan the one island? Or that's all Long Island, isn't it?
My New York geography is dog shit.
So whichever New York island is on an island. Oh, neither of us know because I guess we're just terrible at everything. But
sure.
Whichever one is separated. If it were separated from the rest of New York City,
here's one. Montreal Island is separate from everything.
Sure. If it was totally separated and there was no way to get back and forth, that it would just descend into violence in the streets and looting and people killing each other, and that the only thing that is protecting the city is the concept of law as provided by an active police force.
The Dark Knight Rises is kind of the blockbuster equivalent of those commercials you see on like the Weather Channel for like tactical cameras to catch your nanny spying on you or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Or like if you're worried that your maid steals your jewels because you're some fucking weird racist, then this is your movie.
So how about we talk about a better movie, Isabel?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about a movie that I actually liked. Let's talk
about Andrei Rublev, which was the second movie by Andrei Tarkovsky, carved from an earlier work. It's kind of ambiguous to me whether or not it was actually released in that form called, what was it? The Passion According to Andrei or something, something similar to that. Mm-hmm. The cut that I watched, the cut that was on the Criterion channel was the, director's cut, which was 3 hours and change long.
Same. That's the same one I watched.
Okay, good. So
I want to start off with a mea culpa, maybe.
A mea culpa?
Yeah, because last episode, I think it was when we were signing off, I mentioned that I think Solaris is too slow to really get the IMDb crowd interested in things, and Andrei Rublev was more normal and more like I don't know if I said the word normie, but I think I was.
Oh, you 100% did.
As the normie Andrei Tarkovsky movie, and I was wrong. Apparently, I remember this movie completely different from what it actually is like. A, I forgot it was 3 hours and change long. B, I forgot that most of the movie is people looking sad and standing around with long camera shots. And I don't mean that insultingly, for what it's worth. Yeah,
this is a wide lens movie. You can tell that just lovingly framed sad people with the edges of the frame just like looping, not looping, but like a wide angle lens does. Mm-hmm. So, Andrei Rublev, an actual person, an actual 15th century painter of idols of note. And this is 3 hours of, how to say?
It's scenes from his life.
This is functionally a biopic, but, it's split into, 7 episodes?
That sounds correct, yeah.
Yes. And, each episode taking on, a small facet of his life and work, a lot of it involving struggles with art itself, creative problems, artist's block, and troubles of faith, trying to negotiate one's faith with one's work.
Real quick, it is actually 8 episodes plus the prologue and epilogue.
There you go. The prologue involving a man with a makeshift hot air balloon, and an epilogue with horses, which I'm led to believe Tarkovsky thought of as a symbol for the spark of life, which is why they keep showing up in this movie.
Yeah, and I think it points to one of the strengths of this movie, which is associative meaning and not necessarily direct meaning.
Sure.
Because he never explains, oh, this is what horses mean to me, or there's not ever really a horse that's super integral to the plot, let's say.
No.
But this images of horses reoccurs routinely, and it's presented in different ways every time. And the final actual scene of the movie, like the final shot, is just horses standing by a river while it rains.
Tarkovsky, ever the elemental filmmaker, water everywhere, much of it symbolizing life. And, because water is a recurring motif in Stalker. It's a recurring motif in, no, it's not a recurring motif in The Sacrifice. The Sacrifice, I think, is one of his Air movies.
But it is a recurring motif in Solaris as well.
It is, that's true.
There's actually a couple shots in here, and there's some of my favorite shots in the film, where he just shoots a running river as it like runs its course. And what really delves into like the water itself, and you see things kind of swimming in it. Like there's an early scene where some milk gets dumped into it.
Yeah,
and you watch, yeah, and that's beautiful. And you watch like the milk kind of pour out and go down the river. And then a later scene also focused on a river, which is also there's a parallel image in Solaris of a river where there's a bunch of like a reeds or grass in it, and you're seeing the grass and the reeds kind of flow over each other as like the river runs through it. I think that speaks to some of his greatest strengths as a filmmaker, which is a maker of images. This film is not hurting for images.
No.
He is the anti-Nolan in that way, almost. It's a film of images, and which makes sense for being a film about the painter of icons. This
movie, and it only really locked in whenever the ending montage of so the movie takes place over the course of Rublev's life, culminating with an extended, very patient, very ballsy 10-minute montage of Andrei Rublev's surviving work in bold color. So by the end, I was struck by a very pervasive feeling of it's not quite Sonder, but it's close. Sonder being the feeling of realization whenever you're like out on the street or otherwise surrounded by strangers and realizing that they themselves are living a life as complex and as deep in meaning and as deep in feeling, surrounded by friends and family, as much as you are, however fleeting that might be. Now, this struck me here for just objects, like stuff, art specifically in this case, but also just anything like manufactured, like anything that I can like lay my eyes on, someone made. Like there's a whole process behind that. And a lot of it is old and survives.
And we can almost touch moments of the past through the surviving relics of it.
Yes.
And I think that's the reason that the final sequence, the bell, is actually my favorite sequence of the piece, which Andrei actually isn't in super much, but it focuses a lot on Boriska, who's a young son of a bell maker. Everyone around him basically died. And this prince, I don't want to get into like anything deeper than like the plot for this, but the prince is basically like, hey, make a bell. And he's like, I know how to make a bell. My father taught me how to make a bell. I'm going to make the best bell possible. You have to do whatever I say. And you can tell the entire time he's like, I don't know how to make a fucking bell. My father never taught me this. He doesn't say this until the end, but it's clearly implied throughout with the way he responds to things, with the stress that's put on him. And he knows if he doesn't accomplish his task, him and the people who are helping him will be killed. And you are essentially just watching the creation process occur. And watching this person who is thinking, I need this to work, but I don't know if it's going to. I don't know if the thing that I make is going to be worthwhile or is going to effectively do what I need it to do. And
he's at the mercy of his instincts.
Yes. And then finally at the end, when the bell I was genuinely didn't know whether the bell was going to actually ring or not. Because that's the question the entire time.
It's a very thrilling little piece of suspense.
Because you see them slowly start to get the, what is the thing in the bell called that strikes the bell?
I'm not sure. That's a good thing. Let me look that up. It is the bead line. No, it's the clapper.
The clapper, yes, that makes. I recognize that's right. But they're preparing the clapper to hit the side of the bell to see if it'll ring, and they're slowly moving it back and forth because it's a giant bell and it's super
heavy as shit.
And there's so much tension in those moments. It feels almost like the longest part of the movie, even though it's, for the rest of the film, an incredibly short sequence.
Yeah, it's like 30 seconds.
Yeah. And finally it hits and you hear the bell and like all the tension falls out of you, and then
it just breaks down.
Yeah, Boriska breaks down, and later Andrei finds him and finally breaks his own vow of silence and is like, hey, let's go together. You're going to make bells. I'm going to paint icons, and let's leave here. And that's kind of like his final moment of becoming. Like Andrei Rublev's own moment of becoming who he was going to be is becoming this person who would create this art that we eventually come to see. And it's like the entire film becomes its own version of this last piece of the film. It's like It's like the film exists within itself, and then we see the icons at the end, and it's wrapping it all around together.
There's also, which was really interesting with this, two things. One, thick with action sequences,
which I also forgot for some reason. But there's an incredibly long battle sequence where a lot of shit happens.
Yeah, it's very it's rife with incident. I don't know if I would call it choreographed, but there's a lot of shit happening,
and it's pretty brutal too.
It is pretty brutal. And although one thing, I mean, if we're going to like talk shit about this movie, you made the point in the Slack about this movie is scored weird.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think it's clear to tell that even though I think if it was not Tarkovsky that made this, I think we'd be able to say this is like one of the best films a director made. Like any director would be proud to say that this is their best film. But Tarkovsky hadn't fully found himself yet, I don't feel, when we were watching this. Like it's his second film, and you can see his visual styles mostly there. Later, he would do a lot of amazing things with color photography as well, but certainly like his long takes, the slowness of his films, the dramatic structure as well. But the actual music, it's very conventional at points, and it's like feeding you the feelings where the rest of the film is not feeding you that.
I mean, that works. That works like at the end during the art montage. Mm-hmm. Not so much earlier in the film. But also the Tarkovsky's sound design, which is especially excellent in Stalker, is not here yet.
Yes, there's no there quite yet.
Not quite yet. Still, I'm going to assume that that our 20 minutes for these two movies are up.
Yes,
and I'm going to go ahead and assume that Andrei Rublev will be moving on.
The only way I think it wouldn't is if Dark Knight was way shorter, so I would have had to watch a shorter movie when we circle back around. But Dark Knight's almost fucking 3 hours long anyways, so...
All these movies are fucking 3 hours long.
Yeah, so...
Thankfully, the next two are both under an hour 40. Yes.
But yes, congratulations, Andrei Rublev.
Andrei Rublev, you get to move on. And you will face the winner of this matchup. And I feel like we're going to fight.
Andy Ruby.
Wait, what?
I said Andy Ruby.
What the hell is Andy Ruby?
Like Andrei Rublev, like Andy Ruby.
Oh, Andy Ruby. Okay, I thought you were mispronouncing Andy Rooney.
I mean, I was literally about to ask you, is Andrei, I was going to say Andrei Rooney. Is Andrei Rooney dead? Andy Rooney's definitely dead.
He's 100% dead.
Good riddance. We're going to cut that part out. I don't know if, actually, no, he's said some really shitty things. He's said some super racist and homophobic stuff, so I don't know. Fuck Andy Rooney, who cares?
Okay, wait a minute.
He lived a whole life. He was 92 when he died. He can fuck off.
Is he the 60 Minutes guy, or is he the yellow-faced guy from Breakfast at Tiffany's?
Both, right?
I thought one of them was Andy and the other one was Mickey.
You're right. Mickey Rooney is yellow-faced guy. 60 Minutes guy is Andy.
Okay.
But...
Glad we got that sorted out.
He's not a fan of gay people or black people or Native American people, so, like, who cares?
God. Moving on to our second matchup today.
Take that, Andy Rooney.
God. Talk about kicking a guy when he's down.
But anyways, what are we talking about? Movies?
Still movies. Our next matchup, the favorite going in, the 62 seed, Wall-E, directed by Andrew Stanton, released in 2008, starring Brent Burt, Elisa God. The attack of bad handwriting again. God.
Elisa Knight. Were you going to say Knight?
Because I wrote K-I-N, so...
But Ben Burt, Alyssa Knight, Jeff Garlin, and Fred Willard are the big ones.
Yeah, those are the big four that I have written down. Big hit, $533 million take on a $180 million budget. Won for 6 at the Academy Awards, winning for Best Animated Feature. Versus The Truman Show, directed by Peter Weir, released in 1998, starring Jim Carrey, Laura Linney, Noah Emmerich, Natasha McElhone, and Ed Harris. $264 million take on a $60 million budget in those Vaporwave 90s dollars. 0 for 3 at the Academy Awards. The nominations were director Peter Weir, original screenplay Andrew Niccol, and supporting actor Ed Harris. So, normally we talk back and forth about these movies. I want you to just go in on WALL-E so I can say my piece at the end.
I already did my thing on Pixar earlier, and I think this film is also very neoliberal, but I think that's less my problem with it when watching it than the fact that I feel it's getting me to feel something, but the way it's doing it feels deeply disingenuous and cynical. Because, like, there's the final scene. Everyone's fucking seen WALL-E. I'm just gonna spoil it. If you want to just watch WALL-E, you'll probably like it or whatever.
Jesus. Okay. All right.
But like, there's a scene at the end where WALL-E has forgotten who he is, and Eve holds his hand, and he remembers who he is. And I cried, but I didn't cry because like I felt it earned it. I cried because WALL-E looks like a sad puppy, and he's been hurt a bunch of times. And it's like, if you show me footage of like, oh, here, we made the CGI puppy. Isn't it cute? Here, we're just going to kick it for a little while. And do you feel something? I'm like, yeah, I feel sad. But like, you didn't do anything. You just kicked a puppy.
I mean, WALL-E is kind of like a victim of slapstick for a lot of this movie. Like, it's a lot, like the first half hour is like slapstick violence. It's like, oh, what's this thing? Oh, I don't know what this is. Oh, boom, I fell on my Robo-Butt. I think, hold on, I'm just going to make a note. I fell on my Robo-Butt. That's going to be the title of the show. Robo-Butt. Yeah, and also we just kind of like, yes, here's my thing about WALL-E specifically. I talked about how design and Pixar are really, really interwoven. One is like, it's kind of a symbiotic relationship.
This movie doesn't work without the design there.
The movie does not work without the design there. I think the design in this film, especially the character design on the robots, is fucking phenomenal. And since these are little beings that functionally don't really talk or do
they do though.
They talk a little bit.
And it's like, part of why like when they talk, it's really fucking cute. And it's like, it made me angry. It was so cute. Like the way that Eve says WALL-E's name and the way that WALL-E says Eva is.
Yeah, sometimes the chips don't quite, because, he's kind of grungy, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the design of the characters is exceptional. And while I do admit that it is kind of shorthand, an emotional shorthand, a visual shorthand, when it's done incredibly well, when a character's design is done incredibly well, like I think they are here, 90% of the job is done. So, and I mean, I'm exactly in the same boat as you, I was I was moved by these cute robots, except I don't seem to be pissed off about it.
I guess it's like, to me, it felt very cynical is where it comes from. And I think that the reason I feel that way is not just because of how I feel about Pixar in general. It's also the way the film presents its human characters, which I think is really belittling.
The human shit is my least favorite shit in this movie.
It's very bad. If this movie was just robots, I'd be a lot more kind to it. But the human stuff is, in my opinion, very bad. And I think very, like I said, belittling and obviously fatphobic. But like, it's a whole other thing to get into that. But
here's my kind of thing with this, though. And
it's also,
this movie.
Sorry, I'll let you continue.
Like, my thing with this, rewatching it, is that this movie's a lot darker than I remember it being the first couple of times I watched it. Like, here, like, dig this. The worlds of the governments of the world have completely collapsed and have been overtaken by basically Walmart, right? Mm-hmm. And in search, in capitalism's ever ongoing search for greater profits and this, that, and the other thing, have completely fucked up the earth and have basically done the Elon Musk special and gone out to outer space to try to unfuck the earth. That didn't happen, and we've been floating out in space for 700 years. So while I agree with you that the human shit is bad, as a symptom of just late-stage capitalism run rampant to the point where they've basically toileted the earth. I think that's a good idea, if not
a poor
executed in the best way. Kind of a poor execution. I mean, there's a nugget of something great here, and I think that nugget is strong enough that it allows me to be like, okay, this is like the bad decision the script takes. But the setup and the lead up is all things. It's like, yes, I can understand this. It casts a darker shadow on this film, and it also makes the ending a bit more dark than it actually is, because the movie implies some idiocracy shit where not only have we ballooned in size, but we also can't read too good either.
Yes.
So the idea, though, is that, the robots are there to do stuff, and now we live in kind of like a robo-human utopia, which, sure, whatever. I mean, whatever, it's the ending. But I think there's enough of a good idea there. And you say it's cynical. I think it's very sinister. I don't think it's bad.
Okay. I mean, I guess like the only thing I'd have to say in response is that the way that it I guess if our question is, so everyone on this ship is cared for. Everyone on the ship has food. Everyone on the ship has shelter. Everyone on the ship seems to be relatively happy.
They seem.
I mean, I think like we can quibble about that, but I think like it's they seem satisfied. They don't seem to be looking for more.
They're living.
Yeah.
They are alive.
Which, like, not to be, like, a bummer, but that's a lot better than, like, most people in this country right now, most people in the world. And the question becomes, okay, so what is the actual core problem here? What is the actual thing that was wrong? Okay, so the actual thing that was wrong is that we destroyed life on Earth. But life on Earth isn't shown to be good for its own sake. It's shown to be good for the things it could give people. And these are these things that we can no longer get on this ship. So it's like we don't have enough pleasure in our perfectly contented lives. We need a way to create more pleasure, and the only way to do that is going back to Earth. And I mean, I
don't know if I agree with that.
I mean, why do you think that it has an intrinsic care? Or like does this movie? That's my central question: is does this movie value nature as utility or as inherent good?
I think that because the movie does not, very conveniently for this question, the movie stops as they arrive on Earth, and all those weird questions about, do we just run everything right back? Do we just run the plundering of the Earth for parts back? Or do we make it better? It's kind of I don't know, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure. I'm obviously bringing my own baggage to this in the same way that you're bringing your baggage to this.
Certainly. I think, to be fair, I'm someone who is has read a lot of deep ecology books and has a lot of opinions about environmentalism. So I'm reading a lot of that into this, and this is very a liberal view of environmentalism, a very patronizing and conservationist view, in my opinion. But
I mean, I think that given that the world is already it's implied that the ecosystem of the world is fucked up. Real bad, but not beyond being run back incrementally over a very, very extended amount of time. Now, I want to think that armed with the knowledge that we fucked up big time the first go around, that there would be a more enlightened use of Mother Earth, as it were, the second time around. But that's me bringing my baggage to this movie. The movie doesn't really talk about that.
And if I may, I'm going to quibble with a certain word you use that I think is indicative of the problem I have with it. The word use there. That the world exists for use. How are we going to use these things? Instead of what is the role of humanity in the natural world? Is it separated from it? Is it something to be used and cared for? Or is it something that has intrinsic value in and of itself?
Regardless, I don't know if it can be both?
What?
Or is that a cheap answer?
Both? I mean,
yeah.
I think that turns into, because then you're basically saying, hey, can't we just have utilitarianism and deontological ethics exist in the same moment? Which is not impossible. There's certainly people who have tried, but I think it's very difficult, and I don't think this movie, not that I'm asking a lot of a kid's movie to try that, but I'm saying that
you're asking a lot of me, Isabel. I don't know shit about this. I'm just running on my gut.
like, let's be frank, the fact that I do care a lot about this topic, and that I am personally of the opinion that nature doesn't exist, isn't good because of its uses. It is good because of its inherent goodness, and that's why it is worth caring about it. As if you care about a person, like you care about a human life, you should care about the life of the planet. But I don't think this film cares about that. I think this film is very much in the style of the 20s and 30s conservationists, which is, hey, we have to preserve the earth because that's the best thing for humans. It's not good for the earth itself. It's good because it is good for humans. Does that make sense?
This is not to go off on an ecology tangent, but are there instances of this where it's actively bad for the earth itself?
Of conservationism?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we want to get into that?
Because I'm interested, but we have another whole movie to talk about.
We do.
I don't know if
I feel like
we should
this
probably
is like our like philosophy podcast where I talk about shit that no one cares about.
I mean, we'll probably have to like put it on the. We'll probably have to make like a special Patreon episode that will never air because we don't have a Patreon.
I mean, let me put it in human terms. So, like, I guess like the two options are like I'm me and there's other people. Which
sure.
Actually, I don't even agree with that, but we're not going to get into that today. Let's just pretend.
Lord.
So there's other people. And are those other people good because they have inherent worth? Or are they good because they can do things for me and I should protect them because of that? And you might, like with those two outlooks, there might be some actions that look the same, but have different reasons behind them. And there might be some actions that are very different depending on what your outlook is in that situation. And I think that that's the question that this is ultimately riding on. And I think this movie comes around to the opinion, if we were talking about people in the situation, that people are good because I can use them and because they help me.
I don't know, dog. I just liked it when the robots held hands.
No, I did too. I will say, the robots are very cute. If there's one thing I won't argue with, these robots are fucking cute, and it made me angry, but they are very cute.
See, I was hook, line, and sinker, baby. I was in for the win. But let's talk about, I think, the revelation of this particular set of matchups. Let's talk about the fucking Truman Show.
Yeah, a movie that I didn't have high hopes for going in.
Turns out this movie is actually secretly fucking rad. It aged real good.
It did, and I feel like it's weird. I mean, it's cliche to call a movie prophetic, or like, oh, this
sure.
movie foresaw certain things, but the fucking Truman Show foresaw some shit that we are still dealing with and still don't know how we're dealing with. And I think that is due both to the sharpness of the script and Weir's directing, but also the fact that the script is also open enough that you can get a lot of things out of it.
It's a perfect middle-brow script. It takes one idea, runs with it, and leaves a lot of avenues open for interpretation. Mm-hmm. Because that's the kind of shit that gets movie folk and non-movie folk talking. This movie has a long potential tail.
Yeah,
right?
Like even like just like when I first watched it and what I wrote about in my like really quick letterbox capsule was it could be about God and our relationship with God. It could be about reality TV. It could be about moving from being a child to being an adult. It could be about this is my pretentious one, my very pretentious one, an explication of like what Metzinger calls the ego tunnel in our way of like perceiving phenomena. It could be about so many things, and it's specific enough to make those readings interesting, but also vague enough to make all those readings not exclusionary.
Two things that we said in the chat that I think are very relevant. Well, okay, first of all, let's set this up. Okay. The Truman Show, in case you have not heard about this movie. The gimmick of The Truman Show is that it's a reality show about a guy, Truman, played by Jim Carrey, who's just, as far as he knows, is just living his life in like a perfect sort of pseudo-50s, pseudo-Stepford Wives community where everyone else is an actor and everything kind of revolves around him. And he gets to be suspicious when he starts to figure out that it may revolve around him a bit too much. Two things that we said in the chat. I said, what if, like about this movie, it's like, one, this is a movie about what if God spoke back? And then you said, more than that, what if God spoke and he was wrong?
Yeah, it's actually, I don't know if you know this movie I'm going to reference, but there's a movie from the early 90s, I want to say, with David Duchovny called The Rapture.
The Rapture?
Or just maybe it's just called Rapture. But it's about some sinners before the Christian rapture. And the Christian rapture takes place, and the entire movie is kind of about like, well, was it okay for that to happen? You have here categorical proof that God exists.
Okay.
What if God was morally wrong? And what if God chose to do things that you think aren't okay? Like, how do you deal with that situation? How do you, knowing that there's an all-powerful being, and knowing that it is correct to believe in God, that maybe you don't think he's a cool dude.
But if you're Truman, you decide to take shit into your own hands, and basically give anyone who likes talking about and arguing about free will a giant boner, and just cum everywhere while watching the Truman Show. I'm sorry, we were down on cum references during the last episode. I had to get at least one in.
We didn't hit our quota last week, so you're getting there for us.
Yes, and if you want to get there by yourself, let's talk about our sponsor, Bad Dragon.
God damn it!
Gotta keep the bits alive.
I don't. Now you've thrown me off. You pulled a me, and I don't know where to go from here.
Yeah, that's right. The Truman Show is. You talked about in the chat about how, like, linearly, this kind of moves like a television show. It's kind of episodic. Truman just kind of goes about his day. The narrative tension coming from, like, just stuff being weird. Like, the inciting incident, as it were, is just a light fixture falling from, a studio light fixture falling from the sky. And then, like, on the radio immediately, it was like, oh, well, there was, like, a plane crash and it lost a headlight or something. And it's like, oh, this movie is really good at establishing the rules of the universe. It all feels very intuitive. It all feels very emotional. It doesn't make a lot of linear sense. Like, of course, like, a movie about a reality show where the guy didn't know he was on a reality show has the very real risk of being super hackneyed and super corny and not that great. But this movie kind of hinges on, like, I weep for what could have been for Jim Carrey in, like, the pre-vaxxer era.
God, yeah.
Because I, like most young men born in the late 80s, Jim Carrey was my favorite actor for most of my life. And this is during his
You just
sort of,
love
like,
the number 23.
I love the number 23. I love the one that came out like a couple years ago where he plays like an assassin. I think it's a Polish movie. I forget the title of it. Doesn't matter. But this was during his kind of like, I want a fucking Oscar run. The same run that had Man on the Moon in it.
And The Majestic.
And The Majestic. I think he's really good here. Like his wild man shit is kind of like reined in a little bit, and it comes out a couple times. And Jim Carrey's just a good actor. He's just straight up is a good actor. Laura Linney does some like weird shit in this movie. There's a deep supporting bench. Paul Giamatti's in this. He's great in it. Ed Harris is great in it. Totally deserves that Oscar nomination. I don't know where I was going with this. Oh yes, emotion. It makes emotional sense, as I think what you said. And then I said something along the lines of, this is basically if M. Night Shyamalan made Seconds. This is an M. Night Shyamalan movie that's not like a horror film or a thriller.
Yeah.
It's like an existential horror film in that, what if you realize that everything around you was just false? What if your way out of false consciousness was literally like a wall? Like that, just a wall in the water. What if your false consciousness was as literal as a wall? What the fuck would happen to you?
And
I tell you what happened to me. Nothing good.
And I think that this, I didn't realize that this was directed by Peter Weir for a while. I don't know why. Just like for some reason that never clicked in my head. But watching this, it has its own strange unreality, kind of like Picnic at Hanging Rock or The Last Wave, which are great films. And I think it's to the movie's credit that it doesn't become normal ever.
No, it's like the reason I brought up Seconds is because it's shot super weirdly. Like the blocking is like very strange, like over on the far edge of the screen, oftentimes Dutch angles. You can see the shape of the lens a lot, depending on the camera that they use. It's kind of startling that this is a movie that made a ton of money because it looks so bizarre. But again, this was like this is the late 90s. Popular filmmaking looked really weird. I mean, The Matrix was the next year.
Yeah.
And kind of carries
very
over,
similar themes.
Yeah, carries over a lot of the same themes, explored in a completely different way. But I mean, that and this part in the late 90s, we're really into this sort of postmodern view on reality in giant quotation marks.
Well, I mean, if I can get pretentious for a moment,
go for it.
I feel like the reason that was such a cultural moment in the late 90s, like what is real, like there has to be something outside of what we view as reality. There has to be something more, is because like we're in the era of like Francis Fukuyama's idea of the end of history. Like we've come to the end of it. Communism is defeated. Like representative democracy is the only, like capitalist democracy is the only form of existence. We're heavily deep into neoliberalism now. It's officially on the Democratic and Republican side. And I think people knew, and this is kind of a similar thesis as Fighting in the Age of Loneliness, I think had.
Sure.
Which is that people know something's wrong. And they know that there's something else out there, but they don't know how to feel it because capitalist realism, as Mark Fisher termed it, has not shown them another way to think about the world. That there's this one way to think about it, so you know everything's wrong, and at that point, it becomes just a free-for-all. Well, what could that thing be? Maybe
just
I'm
end
in a
up
TV
flailing
show.
away.
Maybe I'm actually in a computer simulation, just like fucking whatever. There has to be something. And
then you start talking about sort of conspiracy theories and sort of and QAnon bullshit, and that's how we get here.
Yes, certainly. And I think that The Truman Show and The Matrix are both perceptive in knowing that that's what people are looking for, and people obviously they're not really talking about what's actually wrong. They're both fantasy films, for lack of a better term. But they are talking about the idea that it is
I believe
wrong.
the term you're looking for is science fiction.
Is Truman Show really a science fiction show? Like, if you try to explain how that fucking works.
Very soft sci-fi.
Yeah.
Very soft.
But I think the truth that both of them get at is that the ways you are taught to perceive your entire life aren't the only ways of perception. And that there are potential ways to break through that wall of perception, and you need to actively seek them out because they are not going to come to you generally. Yeah,
I was really surprised that this movie held up this well.
Yeah, same. I expected it to be a totally fine movie, but nothing special. But I was...
It's just good. It's straight up good.
Yeah, I watched it a couple days ago, and I'm still kind of thinking about scenes from it, still thinking about moments from it.
So, if you'll allow me to metagame just a little bit.
Yes.
Like, I think I know where your loyalties lay at in this particular matchup.
Okay.
I don't want to use a veto for another, 10 episodes.
Okay.
So I'm going to use my my well-documented oratory skills to try to tease this one out. While I admit that a Truman Show Andrei Rublev matchup in the next round would provide very, very fertile ground for a discussion about God and faith and whatever, infinity, I would like the little robot man to move on. My little garbage trash boy robot son. Now, my claim, or my pitch, as it were, for this movie going forward over The Truman Show, is, other than the fact that I just think it's a really good, a good little science fiction movie, I think in our grand bracket may have, like I had mentioned before, the single most effective and just straight up awesome character design. Although I admit this is more of an animated film thing, I do think that overall the visual vocabulary of the film is worth championing. Now,
can I make a counter argument to that? Or are you still have more to say?
No, you can counter argue.
So, I think if Wally moves to the next round, it gets trounced by Andrei Rublev.
I think both these... Oh, okay.
I think if The Truman Show moves on, if you ask me today which of those moves on, I think The Truman Show moves on over Andrei Rublev.
Really? Because my thought was, doesn't matter who wins here, Andrei Rublev probably moves on.
No, I think The Truman Show has it. I think it's punching it the right weight to move on if it potentially.
Because that was my second thing. Is I think that regardless of who wins in this particular matchup, I think Andrei Rublev wins. So I was going to appeal to the meaninglessness of this particular matchup, so you could throw old Derek here a bone.
I
But you don't even agree to that.
Here, can I metagame farther?
Sure.
So, let's say
Truman
Show and Andrei Rublev... let's say Truman Show and Andrei Rublev move on.
Sure.
And then let's say Truman Show wins. Now, let's... this is, like, forecasting pretty far ahead, so I'm not saying any of these things are going to happen. But I'm guessing Perfect Blue is going to beat Godfather Part 2. And I'm guessing Perfect Blue is going to beat whatever wins in the other matchup. So we're going to have...
the other one includes fucking Chinatown.
But we're going to have... we could have Perfect Blue versus The Truman Show. And that is a fascinating matchup.
Oh, you're right. Man. And those came out the same year, 1998. No. Was Perfect Blue 98?
Let me Google. 97. 98 for American audiences.
Okay, so they come out relatively at the same time. It's still in this... Oh, that's juicy. It's another kind of like examination of like what is real.
Yeah.
Celebrity and manufactured image. And oh, god damn it, I've been hoisted by my own petard. I came in here thinking that I was... Oh, God.
I mean, to be fair, you didn't know that I liked Truman Show that much, whereas like I might move it forward ahead of Andrei Rublev. I don't want to like guarantee that, but that is how I would currently lean.
Now, if I may metagame even farther...
Okay.
Whoever wins in this portion of the bracket...
Let's just forecast who's going to win the end of the finals tournament. It's 2001, people. That's what's going to win, but...
That's probably what's going to win. But like whoever wins in that pod will face either Fargo or No Country for Old Men.
Oh, okay, so I'm not sure I agree with either of those results from the next round.
Really?
Yes.
God. Well, I don't know what to think anymore. Or if I wanted to be a real asshole, I could filibuster for 10 minutes because I know you got to be somewhere.
God, yeah, I have a date, so you basically are like stealing my time from me.
But I'm not an asshole.
Do you want to flip a coin?
No.
Here's the thing.
We agreed early on that this was...
I'm not going to use a veto no matter what.
We are not flipping coins.
This matchup is not important enough for me to use a veto, and I am perfectly willing to be angry at Wally again.
But now you got me thinking, though. You got me thinking about how interesting Truman Show would be to talk about further down the line. Because, like, I'm not... Like, the thing that pisses you off about Wally the most is a thing that I know fuck all about. And it would make for shitty podcasting, okay? Truman Show, I could probably punch my own weight there. And as much as it pains me to see my beautiful grungy robot garbage boy be defeated in round one, I think for the good of the pod, I'm going to rescind this whole thing and allow the Truman Show to go on.
It's a very selfless act, Eric. I'm very proud of you.
I don't feel good about it, though. This was Jesus felt like?
Yes, this is exactly what Jesus felt like.
Oh, man.
On the cross, God showed him a vision of like this podcast, and he was like, "This is what I'm gonna have to die for, I guess." And
now I feel bad for Christ.
But yeah, congratulations to the Truman Show.
Congratulations to the Truman Show. I do think, though, that a victory here kind of like accurately reflects how fucking surprised we were.
Yes,
how good this fucking movie was. Because I think that these two movies are about the same in terms of quality. But I was like, I already knew that I liked Wall-E, and like you, I just thought that maybe Truman Show is gonna be okay. But no, it was really, really good. And now we've got Andrei Rublev versus the Truman Show to look forward to in round two, which is gonna be a hell of a matchup.
Once we get there, before the sun explodes, hopefully.
Oh man, billions and billions of years. So, but one step at a time, we will get through the first round. Our next matchups, as hinted at, for the next episode will be, this is the first one of my ringers, of my wildcard movies in the bracket. We have Godfather 2 versus Perfect Blue, and The Great Escape versus Chinatown. So that's going to be a whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm genuinely excited to finally have an excuse to watch Chinatown, because it's one of those movies I was like, I should watch that since I was like 17 and just never watched, so...
I mean, I think you got a pretty good reason to like put off watching Chinatown.
It's long?
It's called Roman Polanski.
Oh, yes.
Writer, director, and co-star in this thing, I think. No, it's not a writer. Robert Towne wrote this, right?
I don't fucking know anything about Chinatown. Here's what I know about Chinatown is that it's referenced
Robert
heavily in the film Los Angeles Plays Itself.
Also in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is a fucking great movie.
Which is also referenced heavily in Los Angeles Plays Itself. Let's just watch Los Angeles Plays Itself instead.
I mean, that movie's been on my watch list for like ages, like ever since I had a watch list. But now's not the time to worry about watch lists past. Now is the time to do a little bit of a back end matter. Sponsored by Bat Dragon. So if you like any of this, you can get in touch with us and say so. You can drop us a line.
Or if you don't like any of this.
Or if you don't like any of this, if you think it's dog shit, whatever, tell us. I mean, engagement is engagement. You can email us at middlebrowmadness@gmail.com. You can hit us up on Twitter. I'm at Derek_G, and Isabel is at Space Jam Fan. You can get in our comments on Letterboxd and tell us that our writing sucks. I'm at Derek_G there, and Isabel's at The Trap's Jaw altogether. You can also rate us 5 stars on iTunes. It helps. We are so small that it does help, literally.
Yes.
Because we are tiny. So that little 5 stars, or whatever, I mean, rate what you want. I'm not your fucking mother, but, give us a little rating, give us a little review. Don't forget, we are still taking, what is it? Recipes, vegan preferable, and other shit. Just send us some fun stuff in the inbox, middlebrowmadness@gmail.com.
And if you're tired of hearing about it, well, then just send us stuff so that way we won't have to talk about it so much. Make this podcast less sad.
Make this podcast less sad. We are also part of the Noise Space podcast network, along with a bunch of other shows that you may or may not know of. You should go and listen to every one of them. Just like after you've listened to every episode of Middlebrow Madness, go and listen to every episode of every other podcast on the Noise Space network. You can visit the website at noisespace.xyz. I think that's everything.
I think so.
All right. So you got to do the thing.
Oh, do I do? Is that? I've been Isabel Arf.
Yes, and I've been Derek Gade. Have movies, be jolly.
Have movies, be jolly. Good nights to one and all.
All right. Yeah, delicious, delicious aborted babies.
That'll be a great sound clip for me to pull and just put at the end of the episode to make you look bad.
God.